So what's the problem with lending money at interest, right? Particularly lending money at interest when the person has voluntarily agreed to accept those terms. Let's look at it historically and philosophically. Historically, right, a lot of major thinkers, cultures, and religions have forbidden lending money at interest. In fact, in most of the predominantly Islamic world today, you can't lend money at interest. Right? So in the world, there's networks of Islamic banks, right, that follow Islamic principles, which means they don't lend money out at interest. If you put your money in the bank, they will invest it, right, rather than lend it out at interest. Now, philosophically, right, the main concern is with exploitation of the poor. Right? So we're going to assume that we're dealing with a situation in which some lending money at interest is allowed. Right? The question is going to be, what about lending it at very high rates? And the concern is that this becomes a form of exploitation, especially when people are borrowing money to meet their basic needs. Right? If someone desperately needs food for their family and you lend them money at like 50% annual compound interest, right, that could lead to economic disaster for them. Okay. Of course, sometimes in places in the past, that could lead to them being sold into slavery. Right? There have been cultures where if you were in debt, you would sometimes have to sell yourself or your family right, to pay back the debts. Right? Now we have bankruptcy protections, etc. So that's not as much of and we've forbidden slavery, so that's not an issue. For what it's worth, this is kind of talked about indirectly in the popular books and movies, The Hunger Games. Right? So how are the Hunger Games set up? Well, everyone's name is put in a hat, right? And once a year, right, someone's name is pulled out. The name of a child, right, is pulled out, and then they have to go fight other children to the death in this arena. But one of the things they did was the following. You have people who are desperately poor, and you could get extra food for your family if you put your name in the hat an additional time, okay, which increases your chances of this happening. Okay. So the main worry is exploitation of the poor. Right? And in this presentation, we're going to look at arguments for the claim that it does or does not, right, tend to lead to exploitation of the poor.